start this session, I would like to take a few minutes to introduce our company. ITC Accounting and Tax Consultancy is one of the top and most reliable tax agency firms in the UAE. In a short period of time, ITC has mastered how to give you the best tax solutions. What sets us apart from the competition is the uncompromised service quality and professionalism. Our team of qualified and professionals, led by Mr. Ahmed Sharafuddin, is already known in the market as VAT and Excise specialists. By bringing the best team at your service, highly experienced accountants and tax specialists, ITC will continue to deliver a service that is satisfactory on levels of quality and speed. Our portfolio of customers include businesses from different industries, starting from SMEs up to big group of companies, majority of which are generated through referrals and repeated businesses. Now, I would like to take a few minutes also to introduce today's speakers. Mr. Jeren Varghese, our tax manager. Mr. Jeren has been taking care of the excise tax division in ITC since its start. At a short span, Jeren has made his name in the excise tax market and has been working with some of the biggest companies in the UAE. He has been taking care of the excise pre-audits for big group of companies, as well as doing a strategic excise tax implementation and finding solution even when you think that there isn't.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I hope the VAT section was insightful from my colleagues. I would like to thank for ITC for giving me such an honor to speak on behalf of excise tax. With that, I'll be giving few of the things that we'll be discussing or speaking about is that the updates on the FTA, or what are the recent updates that FTA have published in terms of clarifications and user guides? What are the key areas of pre-audits and the designated zone related declarations and reporting, how important it is and how the errors can be identified, how it can be rectified. All those things I'll be speaking about through my presentation. So moving forward, I want to start with the updates and the clarifications that the FTA have recently come up with. In FTA have published on January 2022 the redetermination of administrative penalties levied prior to the effective date of Cabinet Decision 49 of 2021. So the previous Cabinet Decision, which is a 40 of 2021, they have redetermined it and they have lowered most of the penalties. I should say there's a general trend that I've noticed that the penalties have been lowered in terms of the new administrative penalties decision they have come up with. So in the public clarification, they clearly states how the penalties have been lowered, what are the penalties have been lowered, what are the sections that you can look at and compare between the previous decision and the new decisions. And most important factor is that any of taxpayers have been penalized prior to 28th of July, prior to 28th of July 2021, you can get a waiver of 70% for the administrative penalties. So if you have been penalized before 20th of July 2021, you can go with this option that the FTA have come up with, that before 31st of December 2022, if you make those payments, you only need to pay the 70% of the waiver. So with that, if you pay that and the FTA approves it by looking at your case, and they will give a waiver of 70%, which means you only need to pay the 30% of the penalty. Next is the public clarification, the user guide actually they have come up with is the voluntary disclosure user guide. So regarding the voluntary disclosure, people were not sure, or the taxpayers were not sure how to disclose if there's an error identified, how through a voluntary disclosure it can be rectified. I know the limitations of the declarations in terms of excise tax, and certain reportings that you cannot be rectified through an error. So only when there's a tax impact, you can rectify through the VD. So based on the Excise user guide declared on the voluntary disclosure, it talks about the time limits to declare the voluntary disclosure on after identifying the error, and what is the requirement of the amount to be paid, or what are the classifications that you need to make sure of when you're submitting a BD, such as if your difference tax amount is below 10,000, you should not submit a voluntary disclosure. This should be rectified through the next returns or so on. And this clearly states in the executive regulations also. Other than that, they have also talked about what are the penalties, possible penalties that you can have by submitting a BD. So all these things are clearly explained in the user guide, so you can certainly refer to it. And I'm very sure of the fact that it will be really helpful if you are going ahead with the submission of a BD if you have identified any errors. So this is both in terms of the excise and the VAT that you can refer to the user guide. So other than that, they have also come up with in January 2022 the payment user guide. So this is very simplified, that how the payments can be made, in terms of credit card, IBAN, local transfer. So how it can be done, it is been simplified. This, I should say, more for the taxpayers who are newly registered, who are still new to this field and still finding out how everything should be done. So for them to find out how the tax due amount should be paid, they can refer, or the penalties should be paid, they can refer to the payment user guide. The other user guide they have come up with is the Rakib whistleblower program program. So this, they are talking, they are giving the opportunity to everyone in UAE to report any tax evasions to the Federal Tax Authority, where there will be a monetary reward based on meeting some criteria can be received by the normal person. So if you have identified any tax evasional cases, or you finding some of the cigarettes without tax stamps or any of such issues, you can go ahead with the Rakib whistleblower system and report to the FTA. So I think this is very crucial that they have come up with this, and this is very helpful also, especially for the people who are actually paying the tax and who are actually doing the tax evasion. So if your competitors or someone is actually doing the tax evasion and you have noticed this, you can use this opportunity to report this to the Federal Tax Authority. The last but not least is the deficiency public clarification that the FTA have come up with. Deficiency, the physical and non-physical waste that is generated within the DC. Especially this is where it was a much awaited decision, clarification that everybody was waiting for, especially the tobacco industry. And in the clarification, it talks about what are the criteria that you have to meet to get the relief from the FTA in terms of wastage. So basically the wastage that is generated within the DC, which is the physical and non-physical. So you can consider expired goods, tobacco waste, or production wastage, that is excisable goods. All these things can be reported to FTA, and you can get the waiver. Otherwise, it will be considered as release for consumption, where you have to pay tax. So use this opportunity to go through the clarification to understand better, to report it correctly, and to meet the time limits of reporting, and what are the supporting documents that you need to provide or keep a record of in terms of any activities related to deficiency reporting. So all these things, all the latest clarifications and user guides are very insightful. But I should say, in terms of the deficiency, there are a lot of areas that are still unclear to the taxpayers. A lot of gray areas, like they have mentioned, it should be reported within 30 days of identifying the error, whereas it is not sure what do they exactly mean by 30 days of identifying error. For an example, if I have identified, I'm so sorry, not error, the deficiency. So if you have identified the deficiency, it should be reported to FTA within 30 days. So in that case, if I have identified a deficiency within my designated zone, let's say 3 months of my protection, and I have identified the deficiency after 3 months, should I report it after the 3 months within the 30 days period, or is it a must that I report to the FTA every month whatever the deficiency that I've identified within the protection, or any moisture loss, anything that can be appeared? So the clarity is very limited, I should say. And they have also stated minimum tolerance level in terms of the deficiency, non-physical wastage that they're talking about. So what exactly they mean by the minimum tolerance level, since they have been mentioned any specific percentage or numbers, still gray area, and it's unclear what exactly they mean by the minimum tolerance level. So with this, it stands a question, a lot of things stands as a question mark, even though I really believe that it was much needed from the FTA side to come up with this clarifications for to understand better moving forward, to report well and keep the documents in advance. Okay, moving to the next slide, I'll be talking about the importance of the pre-audit. Why it is very important that you conduct a pre-audit. I will suggest that you conduct a tax pre-audit every year, and by the end of the year, like exactly as like most of the companies do in terms of the financial audit. So it is equally important. You should give equal importance as financial audit to the excise or to the tax audit also. Why? Because any time or any day, FTA may come up with an assessment on you, like they find something, like you are selling, they found that some tax evasion, somebody have reported your name to the FTA, regardless you are maintaining well, you're paying the tax, if some false information been went through FTA, they may come up with asking for some reports or documents any day. So this can be avoided if you are well prepared and through a pre-audit, well prepared through a pre-audit, and all the documentations are maintained. It will be much helpful in terms of the, whenever the FTA is asking for, not only the pre-audit, like if you go for a refund, or if you're going for a TRN registration, all these cases, you are having an audit, I can say. You're having an audit, not a full-fledged audit, but yes, limited audit. So why last minute hustle and all the stress to the company and the management when you have done the pre-audit and you're confident in your documentation, you have rectified everything, and the tax auditor or the advisor have given you the right advice to rectify the errors? It solves a lot of issues, lot of headaches that I have personally faced from many of the clients that who haven't conducted the audit, pre-audit prior, and then the FTA audit comes, and then we were there to help them actually through the FTA audit, and we were actually able to tell them how to provide the documents and how well you can provide the documents, or through the FTA audit conducted, what we were doing is that basically we were reviewing the documents, we were reviewing the reports at the same time, basically conducting a pre-audit at the same time the FTA audit, which we don't really suggest because the time limit is very short. So it is always better to do it ahead, but last minute hustle like this conducted, and everybody is under so much stress that we miss out a lot. But this is also one of the areas where we were helping many of our clients. Moving on, we will be further speaking about the key risk areas. Before we move on, I just want to highlight one more thing, which I believe very crucial, is that with this October 2022, excise tax is completing 5 years since the implementation of excise tax. So as per the Federal Decree Law 7 of 2017, Article 3, you don't need to maintain any records post 5 years for the documents which are previous 5 years prior. So if you are a registrant who are registered on October 2017, you'll be completing your 5 years of excise tax in October 22, which means the FTA will not have the right to ask any documents 5 years prior. Considering that if the FTA have notified you stating that you cannot dispose your documents, usually in terms of the tax evasion cases or the ongoing audits that we have expecting, you cannot dispose your documentations. But other than that, if you haven't received any notice from the FTA, you are clear to dispose the documents. And if you require any further questions or assistance regarding this particular area, because I know this is something new that people will be realizing right now, please let us know and we can answer you in detail. I'm very limited because of the time limit, so I'm not going to go in detail on this aspect. But also you should consider the fact that we are expecting an increase in the audit on the time limit that the FTA have got. So there are a lot of chances of expecting a lot of audits from the FTA sides in the coming months. Okay, with that, moving on, I'll be talking about the excise pre-audit risk areas. What are the key risk areas that we will be checking, or the checklist that is most important during a pre-audit? One is the stockpile calculation. So when it comes to the stockpile calculation, we are well aware of the excess, calculation of the excess. So for those who don't know what is exactly the stockpile calculation, I'll just brief you about that. So the excise tax is implemented on October 2017. Excise tax is charged on import protection released from designated zone. So it is where when the product is originated in UAE mainland. So if you have imported some goods, let's say in September 2017, and you have these goods in the mainland UAE, and from next month onwards there will be a tax on those goods. So you need to calculate the stockpile calculation on those goods to ensure that the taxes on those goods are paid. But here it is a comparison between the closing stock and the average sales. I'm not going to go into deep discussions of the stockpile calculation, how it is conducted, but the calculation is to calculate the excess. Okay, so excess is a portion of the stock, but the other portion that it is very unclear, which we call it the remaining stock. So the remaining stock is it's very unclear in the law or in the user guide, and there's no public clarification on this area stating how the remaining should be dealt with, or how whether the tax should be paid on this, how it should be paid, if it is collected, whether it should be paid or it's an income for the taxpayer, how it should be dealt with. So regarding this, it's very unclear, but we are taking the best, the right route to solve this matter during our pre-audit, and we are ensuring that our clients or the taxpayers are paying the tax on the remaining. The third factor that I want to talk about is, in terms of stockpile calculation, is the increase in the RSP. So whenever you have increased the retail sales price of your product, which is registered with the FTA, you need to calculate a stockpile calculation, and it is clearly mentioned in the federal decree law. So whenever you are planning to increase your product in the mainland, I'm not talking about the products which are in the designated zone itself, I'm talking about the products which are in the mainland. It is mandatory that you conduct a stockpile calculation and pay the necessary excess tax to the Federal Tax Authority. Moving on, next is the import and the export. So import and the export, it's all about the documentation and the internal reports. So internal reports is one of the vital factors that should be cross-checked or reconciled with the declarations and the reportings made to the Federal Tax Authority. Supportingly, every declarations relate to the returns, and the returns should be having the equivalent supporting documents proving that it is an import that you have made, it is an export that you have been made. So for the import, customs declaration, packing list, invoice, purchase invoice, all these things are very important, and make sure you have all those supporting documentation, and the quantities are matching, and you have paid the necessary tax amounts to the government. And in terms of exports, the most important document is exit certificate. So an export is incomplete without the exit certificates. Many of the companies I have noticed is that they have failed to get the exit certificate, because you need to pay extra amounts to get the exit certificate from the customs authority. So if you have made any exports previously, or you're still making, please ensure that you collect all the exit certificates with the stamp. I know for a fact that if the customs have emailed you on the Go Green policy that they are not providing the exit certificates or they're going to paperless society paperless basically. So they are limiting the printing and things like that. So, but it's still very unclear. So we suggest that you to collect the exit certificate if possible, and if you have or if you have officially received any written confirmation from the customs stating that they are not able to provide the exit certificate, then it's all right. It's something that can be considered. Okay, moving same as for the imports, I mentioned the internal reporting, such as a purchase report or the export report are vital documentations for the pre-audit when we consider the pre-audit. Okay, moving on is the production in the mainland. So for all those producers who are in mainland and producing certain trains, please ensure you pay the necessary tax to the government. So in terms of the producers in the mainland, you should look at the factor that when you're producing, there will be an excisable deficiency or the wastage, and make sure when you produce, you pay the tax, and when you consume, you claim the deductibles. So there'll be a minor difference of the deficiency. So since you are having this deficiency within the mainland, it is required that you pay the tax on this particular section. So if you are producers and you are identifying this excisable non-physical or physical wastage, please ensure you pay tax with the production. Moving on is a release from DC and enter into DC declarations. Release from DC. Whenever you release from DC, you need to pay the tax, and whenever you enter into the DC, you can claim the deductibles. So whenever you are making the release from DC, it is always important that you pay the necessary tax to the FTA. You keep the goods release note, and it is verified by some of the core management, like your warehouse keeper have approved this release note, packing list, and ensure your stock movement is balancing every month. Same for the enter into designated zone. Whenever you're claiming as an enter into designated zone, please ensure you keep up a receipt note and packing list, or whatever substantial documents you can get, please arrange, because every document is vital when it comes to the audit. And it's about you proving that the goods have actually entered or released the designated zone. And please ensure that every month the team is actually checking the stock movement of how much goods came into the DC and led to the designated zone or consumed within the designated zone. So you have a clear track of what is happening within the DC. It is very important and very vital. That's why I'm stressing you more, because eventually when you go to the deregistration, renewal, or anything, I have seen a lot of stress from the FTA side on these matters. Last that I want to talk about is the consumption within the designated zone. So if you have consumed within the designated zone, it is a must that you pay the necessary tax to the Federal Tax Authority. So I have noticed that through my experience in the pre-audit, that many taxpayers have consumed samples. Maybe it might be like 50 pieces. But this 50 pieces amount to maybe 1,000 or 2,000 dirhams, which you are required to pay tax, as the tax is 50 and 100%, not a very small amount. So please ensure if you're consuming within the designated zone any samples, you need to pay the tax. And samples are not excise free. So please ensure when you're importing samples, you pay the necessary tax to the government. So moving forward, I would like to discuss about the DC declarations and the reportings. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, DC declarations and reporting. So again, I'm coming back to this declarations and reporting. Even though there is time limitations, I want to particularly speak about this declarations and reporting. Is that I have noticed a lot of issues or stress from many of the accountants or tax managers, that they are unable to rectify some of the declarations. Human errors are always part of it. So sometimes we make errors in terms of declarations. So please ensure that there's always a way. There's always a way. It's not a full stop like you made an error and then you're penalized. No, it's not like that. But the most important factor, I'll start from the flow, the DC movement, importance of reporting, how to identify in case of a mistake, and how the error issues are we are noticing in the market. So in the DC movement, what I'm stressing is that you should ensure that there's a DC stock movement that is being recorded every month, and it is in reconciliation with your reportings to the Federal Tax Authority. This is a must, and this should be reviewed every month. So what during our process of declarations review, what we are doing, I mean, the returns review scope, what we are doing is that we are analyzing this and we are ensuring that this movement is being tracked, so that the right amount of goods went outside and the right amount of goods came into the designated zone. Second is the importance of reporting monthly deficiency. So as I have mentioned in the introduction, there's a lot of unclear factors on this, but it is very important that if you have identified any deficiency while producing your accessible goods, this deficiency on the excise, which is the raw material is accessible and finished goods is accessible, obviously there'll be a deficiency on that's happening through the production. So please ensure this has been reported to FTA in the right way and the right documentation is maintained. All these things is very important. And please refer to the user guide, or please contact us if you have any queries on this, because there are a lot of confusions, a lot of gray areas that is still going on regarding this subject, and there's a lot of discussions going on this subject. So soon we are expecting some positive updates from the FTA side regarding this matter, that as the user guide is still unclear on very gray areas. So hopefully many of the problems will be solved regarding this matter. I'm not going in detail, as most of the producers are well aware of what is happening and how is this happening. But again, if you have any queries on this, please do let us know, so that I can give my we can give our time and make make you understand how important this is and how well it should be reported or dealt with. Moving on, if you have made any errors in the designated zone, for example, if you have reported wrong quantity, or if you have reported the wrong declaration, how this can be rectified? It is not something that you should be stressed about, because as a normal accountant or a junior tax tax analyst, you may submit some declarations which may even lead to due to human errors. So this is not the end of the world, or it's not something that you should be really stressed about. There's always, if there's a problem, there's a solution. So it's about the right solution, how to find the right solution to rectify it. So consult the right person who is well aware of this and experienced in this matter, and get the advice from the right person. Please don't go for the wrong advices. There are a lot of wrong advices. So even if you got one advice, please always consult one more person, so that you can ensure that you are in compliance, because reporting is very important in terms of FTA regulations. So to rectify it, there's always options to rectify your declarations or the reportings made. Error issues. So prior to the implementation of EX204 and EX204A declarations, FTA was, not prior, since the implementation of EX204A and EX204 opening stock declaration that has been done in January 2021, FTA have been having the clear track of goods, what is coming in and what is going out. And we have seen a trend post the implementation of those declarations, a general trend of technical issues identified on this subject. But it should be noted that it was there before from the FTA side, the technical issues, but now there's no such technical issues, maybe very, 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 very minor cases where there could be a technical issue from the FTA side, and if you communicate to the FTA, it can be cleared also. It is not something that cannot be cleared. So if you just have to speak to the FTA or consult the right consultant and take his advice and do the necessary requirements to identify. Because sometimes when you're trying to make the release from the direct export from the designated zone, or transfer of ownership within the designated zone, or transfers within the designated zone, you might get this error message saying that there's no enough stock to make this transaction. So that's why the stock movement is very important, and this could be sometimes with now minor cases that technical issues happened also, but usually now we don't see that trend that happened in the initial stages of Jan 2021. Okay, moving forward, I will speak about the registration, deregistration, and the renewals. So in terms of the registration, deregistration, and the renewals, in terms of products, there is product registration, product renewals, and product deregistration, which is the registration of the RSP. You can say retail sales price. So whenever you have a product that is accessible product, it is must that you register the product with the Federal Tax Authority. So now it's been done through branching, which is together with the Federal Tax under the Federal Tax Authority. It's a different company where you have to contact for the registration, and they have certain requirements. For the product registration, you might have to provide the product pictures, GTIN, proof of HS code, food label assessment, MIOT certificate. The MIOT stands for Ministry of Industry and Advanced Technology. And we have seen that through our registration experience, there are certain times where people are not sure of how the proof of HS code can be dealt or get, and they are having a lot of time spent on these products to get it registered. So we were successfully able to complete many of our registrations within a short period, and with our experience and communications with the branching, we are well aware of what exactly the products what are exactly the requirements, and we'll be able to do it in a much faster time period. So if you have any queries related to product registration, product renewals, or product deregistration, please do let us know, and we'll be certainly able to help you out with the minimum time period. Also, please ensure that if you're planning to start a production, import, or anything to do with excise product, please plan in advance and start the registrations at the early stages, so that you save time and your product can be brought to UA at the right time. In terms of the DC registration, deregistration, and DC renewals, for the DC registration, some of the documents that is required is that the pictures of the cameras, the fire extinguisher, punching machine, it should be a fenced area, and you need a MOA to give it MOA, and declarations letter, and most important, valuation and financial security, which is an Excel draft which is provided by Federal Tax Authority, where you have to fill in the expected stock movement within the designated zone. And once the submission is complete, the Federal Tax Authority will give you a day to inspect your designated zone, and they will inspect and ensure that everything is in, all the security measures are in place. And post that, they will be giving you a bank guarantee of the amount of the designated zone. So usually we are seeing a trend of 175,000 as a minimum bank guarantee in the initial stages, whereas now most of the bank guarantees are high as 500,000, which is a minimum bank guarantee that we are seeing right now. However, there are exceptional cases, so that I'm not saying this is it, but this is the trend that we are seeing, and this is the experience that I'm trying to share it with you guys. Also, in terms of the DC renewals, this valuation and financial security is very important. So you will consider the previous year's stock movement, and you have to record that. And the FTA considers a risk parameter of 10 to 12 subjects. Based on that, the bank guarantee in terms of a new registration or the renewal is calculated. And in terms of the TRN registration and TRN amendment, you usually require documents such as MOA, trade license, authorized signatory documents, bank details, etc., so that you have valid TRN. And then TRN amendment, whenever you need to make changes in the bank details or the authorized signatory, it can be also done by providing the necessary subsequent documentation. And also in terms of the TRN deregistration, so if you have a deregistration of TRN, you will basically go under an audit. And recently I have faced an issue where there was a tax payable amount for one of the client that needs to be paid, and the FTA was which was below 10,000 dirhams, and the FTA was stressing on the fact that you should submit a VD, whereas I was able to state on a written communication to FTA that as per the law, below 10,000 dirhams VD should not be declared, and they were actually understanding and accepting the fact. So what I'm trying to say is that you should not stress or get worried whenever they tell you about to make the payment. It's just about the right communications to them, so it can be all dealt in a good manner. Last, I would like to conclude by my last slide, where I'll be speaking about the importance of the internal system procedures for excise tax. Why I would like to stress on this particular project is that most of the issues that we are facing is because of the lack of understanding or lack of internal system procedures. So if you are as a company, please ensure that your people who are dealing in declarations or preparing the declarations to submit the returns are well aware of what they are doing. It is always suggested that they get a training of what exactly is happening and how exactly is the declaration should be met. I get this questions from many people on the fact that excise tax is very confusing. Why it's so hard? There are so many declarations, so many reportings, how it should be dealt. It should be all solved through a training, so that this initial importance that you give and spend time on will reward you in the future. So if you are a company that is not having an internal system procedure for excise tax, or your employees are not trained in terms of excise tax, I request you to go under a training or implementation of internal system procedures, which we have been doing for many of our clients. So this will certainly benefit you a lot in terms of the long run, and the how to keep the right reports, how to keep the right documentation. So once the procedure is there, things are very much easy. So if you are not considering for that, at least I request you to go for a second reviewable process, where we one of our scope is that we go for the returns review. So before you submit the returns, we basically go and review your documentation, your internal reports, and ensure that what you have reported or declared to FTA is actually relevant to your internal reports and documentations. So the second eye is always a must, and end of the day, we all are humans, and any errors can be happening. So do ensure that it is being considered and taken into consideration, and you will be really benefited at the end of the day, comparing to the people who are not implementing this procedures or trainings, not giving the trainings. With that, I would like to conclude my presentation.